Welcome to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club, and we're back to our weekly podcast.
We're back!
Where we play games and brew a good conversation together. It's nice to be talking with y'all again, to see you all if you're watching the video. I am your host, Jenny Wyndham, and
I'm Joel Thomas.
we're back.
We back!
And
we're back.
It's been a busy month. Unexpected and expected, which is, you gotta love life when it throws stuff at you.
Absolutely. And, of all the months to have this happen, to have so many things happening, having Hyper Light Drifter there in the background to really spur me on and give me something else to face was not so bad.
That's good, which is really interesting considering how I feel like you've related to this game, especially compared to the others we've played. I won't spoil it too much for the listeners at home, but yeah, I agree. I think honestly, traveling, we both flew a lot this month. I will say Hyper Light Drifter was such a good game to play on the plane because I don't like playing narrative games on the plane because honestly, I get really sleepy. I will miss stuff because I'm just falling asleep. I want a game that's really mechanically focused that forces me to either do a lot of combat or a lot of repetition. So I'll either play Stardew Valley or something like Hyper Light Drifter, which is amazing.
I think you're right. I think I probably played about 70% of this game on planes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was almost like the good thing about that is you can't throw your controller across the room when you're on a plane. And so my Switch remains intact.
Wow. That again, we're teasing a lot that's going to be coming up later on in the conversation and how you felt about this game.
Just so many feelings.
For folks new to the podcast, welcome. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Every month we play a fresh game to the community so that we can all experience it together, discuss the themes, discuss how we felt about it, and really dig in and savor the experience. We play a lot of games. It's nice to just sit back and really focus in on at least one throughout the month. This month, we just got done with Hyper Light Drifter. So for the second half of the podcast, we will be diving in essentially to a 3/4 spoiler cast for it. We talked about the first section, North, in our last episode. You can listen to that wherever you're listening to this because it's on the same platforms. And today we're going to be going into the rest of the game, going into what we understood of the lore, how we felt about the mechanics, and our final thoughts. We'll also, at the end of the podcast, be announcing our game for June. So stick around if you want to hear what we'll be playing then. Before we get into all of that, though, we always like to stop off at the Pastry Case. This is our grab bag of topics about the industry, as well as other stuff we're consuming and just enjoying. So we have really the quiet before the storm as our main news topic of the show. Summer Game Fest announcements are coming in. So for folks who are unfamiliar, Summer Game Fest is kind of the replacement, I would say, for E3, which used to be the Summer Gaming Showcase, but has now been, I guess, to say it a bit more ceremoniously retired. E3 is no more. Summer Game Fest is led by Jeff Keighley, who is also the one who leads Game Awards, which is the winter showcase that the industry really focuses on now. And on June 7th, the festivals will begin. There is a huge number of showcases from Xbox, PlayStation, Ubisoft does one, Devolver does one. Not all of these are directly associated with Summer Game Fest, like Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, but they're all happening within the same time frame. Shout out to Wholesome Games because we do a showcase as well that's part of a Summer Game Fest.
Hey.
For folks who don't know, I'm one of the organizers, so this is total selfish self-promotion. Check out the Wholesome Direct.
I'm going to promote too. You should check out Wholesome Direct.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not affiliated in any way, so there's no conflict of interest here.
Perfect, thank you. Nintendo also will have their Direct in June, so this is just going to be the first week, maybe 2 weeks of June is going to be absolutely wild because also right after Summer Game Fest, we have the Steam Next Fest, which is the demo season sort of kickoff. So it's going to be busy. we're going to be covering all of that as it happens. But I'm curious, Joel, I guess, are you excited for Summer Game Fest? Do you have specific titles you're looking out for? Are you just excited to just watch and see what's up?
I, you know, this will be kind of my second time even being included into Game Awards in any sort of real
Mm.
way. So for me, it's going to be more of a like, how does this compare to the winter experience? Did
Hmm.
they learn any lessons from the winter experience? I remember the winter one, like there was a lot of frustration around like kind of the celebrity fluff focus and
Yeah.
lack of focus on the people who actually like made and created these incredible games. And so I'm interested to see if they find a better balance for this time around.
Yeah, this one I will say is a little bit different because it's less of an awards show and it kind of takes on more of the role of like game announcements show.
Mm.
So I think generally it's been looked upon with a little bit higher, I would say, sentiment.
Oh,
Um,
great.
Generally, but I think the core problems that folks have and the core criticisms do cross between both Game Awards and Summer
Mm.
Game Fest, because again, a lot of it has to do with just in general how Jeff Keighley has organized a lot of this. So I think you're right. It'll be interesting to see, uh, just after continued years of feedback, what is potentially going to get adjusted, what is going to not. I
How
must
much Post
admit,
Malone screen time are we going to get in this show? That's the
yeah.
thing I really want
I'll
to know.
admit I'm looking forward to the announcements. Summer Game Fest is interesting. The Summer Game Fest proper is interesting because it's such a triple A focused
Mm.
showcase. Usually, I think the pre-show holds a lot more of exciting stuff for me. Usually, the adjacent showcases, just because they tend to focus on more indie games, are more interesting to me. And the actual SGF proper tends to be a bit hit and miss depending
Mm.
on the year. If it's Final Fantasy year, I'm happy because
Hey,
you
there we
probably
go.
have a Final Fantasy announcement of some sort. Um, but I actually have not paid too much attention to what's potentially coming up, and I'm
Mm.
excited to just watch and be surprised, honestly.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm pumped too. Then I have not been keeping a pulse on any of the like long term games being released. Like there have been so many good games this year that like it's like month to month for me right now.
Oh my
And
gosh,
so
yeah.
like I haven't even been able to lift up my head to see what types of things are being speculated about. So
Hmm.
I think I'm going to be walking in kind of a blank slate.
Yeah, which is honestly, I think the best way to experience a lot of these showcases.
Mm,
Anyone, which I am that person. Anyone who's said maybe Silk Song is gonna launch, maybe this is Silk Song's time, has known the taste of disappointment many times over. And I think for me, what's really exciting is just going in without trying to expect too much,
mm.
and just be excited for what ends up happening. I think that's usually my philosophy to not get super disappointed.
Makes a lot of sense. I also feel like I'm kind of I think in part because so many games are coming out so consistently now, there's a lot fewer instances where I am really hoping to get more information about something. Like
Yeah.
I actually think the first Final State Fantasy remake game was maybe the last time that I have been looking forward to something for like months, like literal years for that
Mm-hmm.
one. I guess Elden Ring, I did get, I got a little bit of a taste of before it dropped, and I was like, this just looks like something I'm excited for.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a rare experience for me these days.
Now that you mention it, I feel like that's the same for me. I feel like I go
Mm,
through waves, and there are seasons in which I'm like really excited for specific games, and then right now I feel like I'm kind of in a era where I'm not super anticipating any one title. I think there are a lot of titles I have my eyes on and I'm very excited to see more about, but really in terms of especially triple A games, I think the only one I'm really excited about is maybe hearing more about Final Fantasy IX remake because apparently it was confirmed. We don't have any announcement on when anything will be
oh,
confirmed, but I'm just like
interesting.
Final Fantasy IX remake is now my like next
Most
next
anticipated game.
yeah, I know. I have a problem. This is just
Or do you have a solution? The rest of us have a problem.
Yeah, really, that's actually the best way to go about it. I think Fields of Mystria is another one where they just announced they're going into early access. Fields of Mystria is sort of the next big farming game that I'm really looking forward to. It
Mm,
looks like 90s anime with its profile pictures, and it looks like sort of 90s SNES pixel art and sort of the
very
gameplay
cool.
element. So really excited for that, and that's early access. The early access is coming soon. I think they have an official date, but it's coming soon. And I don't typically do early access. Like, I know a lot of people are in the Hades 2 early access. I don't know if you've picked it up at all.
I haven't. I've been enjoying the videos that I've seen of people playing it.
Yeah.
It looks like they've brought some of my favorite elements back around. And that's about what I know at this point.
Yeah. See, and normally I don't do early access because I love to play full releases so I can just enjoy
Yeah.
the game as, a complete package, and not have to maybe wait or restart different elements. Um, I did do Coral Islands early access. I was super excited for that.
Mm,
And I think Fields of Mystria is another one where I'll probably dive in at least a little bit because it looks so good.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Um, with this awesome news that's coming up, we do have a piece of news that happened last week. So this is a little belated, but I did want to talk about it because it has impacted the industry quite a bit.
I'm shocked. I did not hear about this. I'm
You did
looking at our
not? Oh
notes.
my gosh.
No.
Okay. So this is perfect. So this is just in case you haven't heard about this as well. This is an article from gamesindustry.biz by Christopher Dring. And the headline is IGN Entertainment acquires Eurogamer, GI, VG247, Rock Paper Shotgun, and more. So basically, the gamer network portfolio. If you are online and you are reading reviews, looking at guides, reading features, watching videos, you have probably consumed one or more pieces of content from one or more of these websites. These are some of the
Mm,
most prominent gaming journalism sources in the industry, and they are all now under one owner, IGN Entertainment. This consolidation comes with, as many of them do, layoffs. The the like politically correct term they try to use, some redundancies have been made, which is
Jesus.
just fires me up when
Yep.
I just say you laid off people. Um, and so this is huge because, again, this is just showing increasing acquisitions across the industry and the flattening of the voices we are going to have telling and talking about games moving forward. I'd love it. You had a huge reaction when you read this headline. What are your
I'm
thoughts on this?
just so sick of this trend. I'm just so sick of it. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
every industry, sorry to be a Debbie Downer for a moment, but like this just really bothers me. And I know that like it literally is the end game of capitalism. I understand that this is the system we are living in, but it feels like when it was a bunch of like airlines consolidating and things like that, it was like it felt so far away to me that like I didn't really think about it much.
Mm-hmm.
But more and more places I'm seeing impacted by this type of consolidation, and it is bad. It's just a bad thing. It's literally just a bad thing.
Yeah,
That's all there is to
I
it.
think once again, I go back to this idea of industry knowledge and legacy, where, and
Mhm.
this is for any industry, but in games, we have developers who have decades of knowledge being laid off. And with that knowledge leaving, we are essentially taking these studios and resetting them, pulling them back into square one, because they're going to have to relearn processes. They're going to have to make the same mistakes that, folks ahead
Mm.
of them have made before. And I see this with journalism as well, where especially with a lot of the events happening right now, Gamergate 2, the layoffs that are happening, the unionization work that's happening, it's going to be really important to have journalists who have that historical context and can create articles and writing that allows people to see that full picture. And that is not going to happen because some of the folks that were fired were industry vets who have been in the industry for
Mm.
20 some odd years. That's huge. knowledge just being lost. And
Yeah.
it's a shame.
Man, yeah, I'm over this. I'm over this trend,
Yep.
and I'm ready for. Can we go back to having Angel Fire websites that we go to find cheat codes and to find
Honestly.
a random person's blog spot about a game?
Yeah, it's wild and it's hard because I was thinking, oh well, what could we say to maybe say like, oh, let's leave us with an actionable, go support independent journalists, which is one thing you can do, but I think it's tough because how many independent journalists can we all support? There's going to be a point in which the market is so saturated. It's already so saturated.
Hmm.
We can't necessarily like I don't know. It's hard. I think you should do what you can. If like I love Aftermath. They're a group of journalists who, after one
Oh,
of the initial
cool.
waves of layoffs, they created their own independent site. I support Aftermath. I think they're a great just publication, really good writing. There are a lot of sites that you can do that with, but again, at the same time, it's like I think we need something more sustainable for this industry. And while I think it's great to independently support all of these artists and creators and writers, we need something more.
More
So,
systemic.
yeah, exactly. Um, but it's important to talk about. It's important to know that this stuff is still happening. And hopefully someday we'll have news that's a little bit more heartening. But moving on, I was curious just what have you, because we haven't talked in a long
It's been a
time,
while. Yeah.
what have you been reading, watching, playing, listening to?
I've gotten through a few books recently. I know that I promised everyone my thoughts on the Murderbot book, the first
Mm-hmm.
Murderbot like novella, and wasn't sure how the first person narration was going to work for me, and ended up really liking it. I ended up finding it like really endearing. The kind of like high anxiety android character that you're following around who has like social anxiety, just like a really compelling, funny character story with a
Oh.
lot of like pretty intense action elements. So
Mm-hmm.
would recommend, and it's real short, and it's like under 200 pages.
Nice.
I also have been wanting to get into Terry Pratchett's Discworld series for a long time. And I read like the first one a number of years ago, but couldn't really like get into it. And then everyone says, "Well, don't start with the first one." It's like, well, where do I start? Someone recommended that I get into Pratchett more specifically with the Monstrous Regiment, and just finished it today. It was incredible. Essentially, like a young woman takes the king's coin, kind of, to join the military, disguised as a man, and it's an incredible satire on war, kind of war culture, sexism within the military, and I just thought it was. I've read some other things from Pratchett before. This was incredibly clever, incredibly funny. You
Mm.
got werewolves, you got trolls, you got vampires, you got Igors that are kind of like Frankensteinish stitched together things. Like, it was great. I just had a fantastic time with it. So would definitely
Awesome.
recommend that one.
Very cool.
um, I also took Friday off and I watched all of Bridgerton season 3 in one sitting.
Wow. I didn't know you watched Bridgerton. I didn't know you were
Oh, I'm a
Bridgerton
bridge
fan.
boy. I'm a bridge boy. I did not love the second season. I thought it was boring and not sexy enough. This season, they really pulled through for me. They gave me intrigue. Apparently, it was only half the season, so it was like
Hmm.
6 episodes or something. But really enjoyed it. Have you watched it? Are you at
No,
Bridgertonites?
it's funny because I have not seen any of Bridgerton. I know like about the balls, like people on TikTok are always posting about balls and being picked to be like the diamond belle of the ball or something.
The Diamond.
Okay, the diamond. And
Yes.
I will admit there's been enough posting about it and I've seen it enough, especially with season 3 getting so much hype. I think I might start it just to see if it's something that I can get into. Because I'm not usually into like the Victorian sort of age society stories, like Jane Austen-esque
Yeah.
vibes. I'm not usually into that, but I'll give it a try because I do love drama and intrigue.
I same. I think they do a really fun job with it, and I also got to say, like, shout out celebs when they're doing good things. The
Mm-hmm.
main actress for season three, the one who the story kind of spins around. I can't remember her name. I
It's Nicole
apologize.
something because I actually know
Yeah,
her name because I saw some of these posts.
she's
Um,
been posting
yeah.
about the genocide and specifically with Rafa, and like where we are recording this, it's after like a series of absolutely horrific attacks on
Mm-hmm.
some of the refugee camps there. So it's just like so refreshing when someone who knows that like all of this, I think the show dropped within the last 2 weeks, and
Mm-hmm.
so this is when she's going to be getting the most attention, and that she's immediately turning that focus to something that like really matters in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's just something that, like, it's something to be happy about, like, or at
Yeah.
least like recognizing as a good thing.
Yeah. Yep. I will admit part of the reason why Bridgerton has been more on my radar is because of people saying that she's been speaking out about Palestine. And honestly, like, I will admit it got me more intrigued because I'm like, okay, well, if these, like, this actress specifically is like talking about this thing, I'm really interested to see about supporting her work. And then I was like, oh, Bridgerton, okay. So it definitely is a factor for me, at least.
I will add, have you watched Dairy Girls?
No, but I think she's an actress in that
She's
too,
also in
right?
that, and I would say that's one of the funniest shows that is on Netflix right now. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
it's on my list, and it's one of those where I'm like constantly wanting to watch,
Uh-huh.
but then it never just happens because I always get distracted by something that's on the recommendation. So I will have to make time to
Understood.
watch that.
Final thing for me, I finally finished my first successful run of Balatro, where I made it through the
Bravo!
top blind. Um,
Amazing.
and I'm still playing it. Like, it's just been a really great, like, turn your brain off, put something on
Hmm.
in the background, and just like get them jokers.
Nice.
So yeah, really really enjoyed it. It's been a nice little comfort play for me.
Do you have
Um,
a favorite Joker or a favorite setup uh
The only one
builds
that I
that you
have
like
been
to do?
successful with is the one where you get like a permanent +1 to your hand.
Okay.
Every other build that I have tried, I have failed utterly and miserably at.
Nice.
So we'll see. Yeah, but and I guess apparently there's this game out called Animal Well that I need to get into.
Oh my gosh. Well, since you mentioned
Yeah, tell
it,
us what you've been getting into, Jenny.
oh, I've been getting into Animal Well. Yeah, I've fallen down the rabbit hole. It's so good. Um I think so. For folks who have not heard of or seen Animal Well, just by looking at it, it is a exploration based Metroidvania, where I specifically say exploration based because most Metroidvanias have combat. This one does not. It has puzzles. It encourages you to explore, to observe, and you have a quest that you're doing. You have to find essentially like four of these things. I'm being vague on purpose. Sorry, it's annoying, but it's part of the joy of this game. You're going to find four things, and that's your main quest. You play this little blob. The world has this retro sort of CRT pixel art feel. Like, it feels like you're in sort of this 80s pixel art game. Uh,
Excellent.
Atmosphere up of the wazoo. It's just so beautiful to play. And I think the thing that has entranced me about Animal Well is that this is a game of secrets. You can play it as a Metroidvania, you can roll credits and be done with it, and it's a very solid experience. But I think what I love about this game is that it brings to mind and it pays an homage to other titles like Tunic, like Fez. While the story is definitely not as in my opinion, the story isn't as strong as like Outer Wilds. The
Mm,
element of intrigue that Outer Wilds and the drive to discover what's next, the drive to be curious in a world, I think that from Outer Wilds, I felt an Animal Well, which is not an experience that I often have in games. Usually, I like to go through the story. That's kind of it. Rare instances, again, Outer Wilds and Tunic are the ones that come to mind, where I wanted to know everything. I wanted to leave no stone unturned. And I will say, Animal Well, Animal Well is a game where you will feel very, very smart, but you will also feel very, very silly. And I highly encourage you to feel free and look up hints. I'll have to link, I believe it was Valis from the community who linked a guide that had just hints to some of the secrets in Animal Well so you don't spoil anything. So
That's
I'll
a
have to
great
link it
idea.
in the newsletter. I'm going to actually make a note so I don't forget to do that. But it's just such a cool experience. And I think what I have treasured most about playing Animal Well right now is the fact that a lot of these puzzles break that fourth wall and actually kind of move outside of the game into sort of this player almost ARG feel. And I will say it's been a joy to be sort of part of the zeitgeist and be a part of the
Mm,
community as they're solving the puzzles. I'm a little bit behind. I'm not as, and most of my participation is through observation and just like
mm.
silently cheering folks on. There are 2 Animal World Discords I'm a part of. One was actually the press Discord where they gave us the codes before release so we could play it and start like gathering our thoughts. And everyone in the press Discord, there are people still in the press Discord, like other journalists just being like, we're figuring this out. And then I'm a part of the main Animal Well Discord where the community there is absolutely wild. Everyone's so just, they see things that I would have never looked twice at. So it's been just really cool seeing how the community has come together to solve a lot of these puzzles. And I think that's what's really exciting for me is that this game has moved beyond just being a solo experience.
Do you think, do you get the impression that this is maybe what One Shot felt like when it was first released? Like that kind of like fourth wall breaking, people figuring out the puzzles and everything together, that kind of thing?
I feel like a little bit. Yeah, there's a little bit
Interesting.
of that. I think much less with One Shot. I
Sure.
think just to the degree cuz like again, Animal Well, I have been appalled at how like shocked at the layers of secrets where I'm in a room in the game on a screen and I'm like, I think I discovered all the secrets. No.
Surely.
If you think you've discovered all the secrets, add like one or two more, then that's when you've discovered the secrets. And I'm not even sure if that's even the end case. But I do agree. I think there's this element of, yeah, it's a water cooler game. It's one of those games where
Mm.
it's like if we were going to an office to work, like if we were both still at our old job, this would be the game where we would come back to work on Monday and we would definitely talk about it.
Man, now I really wish that this game existed back when we worked together.
I know. Oh my gosh. So yeah, Animal Well, I can't recommend it highly enough. If you enjoy that kind of puzzle game, if you enjoy Metroidvanias, you'll still get a good couple of playthroughs out of it, even if you don't like puzzles too much. Um, if you're not a fan of Metroidvanias or puzzles or like feeling stumped in games, this may not be the one for you. But it's a great experience. I've also been playing Venture to the Vile, which oh my gosh, okay, I had to. So they sent me like a release press kit just because they're like, hey, you play these kind of games, we want to celebrate launch with you, and I was like, awesome. So for folks watching on video, which Spotify has video too, so you can see they sent these prints and so this is the main
Whoa.
character. Venture to the Vile is another Metroidvania where you play. Uh, Everyone in this world is a human, but they all wear animal masks, which is kind of like weird.
Oh, snap. Okay. I couldn't
Yeah,
tell that.
it's like almost kind of got an Over the Garden Wally sort of vibe. Let's that focus in. It's a little bit weird. It sort of teeters on the line between cozy and unnerving, comforting and
uh,
nostalgic, but also eerie. Uh, it's
it
so
looks
good.
like, for those of you, I'll try and describe it for you pod listeners. It's if you ever saw the show Zoobilee Zoo back in the late 80s and early 90s,
Subilee
it's
Zoo.
like a children's
There's a
program
little
where,
badge.
oh, so
We'll let the
cute.
camera focus in. It's like a little badge that they sent.
Basically there's like humanoids that dress up as animals, and it's like really creepy. This is like
Mhm.
if those people wore more clothes, um, and apparently had weapons on them. Was the main character, does he have like a scythe for an arm?
So, the premise of the story is that you play this deer guy. I feel so bad because I forget his name. But you play this deer, and his village is taken over by this corruption known as the Vile. Now,
Mm,
most people have been taken away, presumed dead, at best missing. But when his arm was exposed to a creature of the vial, instead of like rotting clear away or killing him, uh, his arm absorbed the vial's power, and now it can turn into a weapon. It's very like Princess Mononoke,
Oh, the
where
demon
the
arm.
demon arm, every time he uses it, it kind of consumes him a bit more. As you explore in this game, it's a Metroidvania, so you're going through, unlocking areas, pursuing even deeper secrets. As you beat bosses in this game, you absorb their powers, and that sort of advances this corruption. And so this question is of how far will you sacrifice yourself, your sense of being? How far will you go to potentially save the one you love? Uh, they also sent some stickers. I started my journal sort of entry for it.
No, excellent.
Yeah, just to do something cute with it again, because y'all know we like our game journals here. um, and I have just two more things I wanted to share with you from what they sent. The first one was, at first I was like, it's a card case, and Sam's like, no, I'm pretty sure it's like a old timey cigarette case.
Oh yeah,
Um,
for sure.
where I feel like there we go. They have like a metal. This is like a metal embossment of the deer, and you can open it. Very cool. And then the last thing, which I knew you would get a kick out of, is this comic book that they had custom made.
A
There's like four or five at least different stories, and each story is done by a different artist. So this one has a very painterly feel. This one's like a more traditional sort of comic book art style, so it's super cool, just delves deeper into the lore of this village. I'm playing the game. I'm loving it. It's very good. I will say the combat feels a little bit simplistic at the point of the game that I'm at right now. And it feels a little bit slower and a little bit more sluggish than, say, like Hollow Knight. So I'm not feeling that precision with it, but the story is really compelling, and there's so many side quests and side characters. I kind of don't mind that the combat isn't, exceptional. It's passable. It's very good. And yeah, so that's Venture to the Vial.
Is it
Amazing.
easier than Hollow Knight?
It is definitely easier than Hollow Knight.
Okay, well then I could maybe play it then.
Yes, I think you would actually really enjoy it.
Hollow Knight was far past my my capability level.
Yeah, and I think this is meant to be a much smaller game. I took a look at how long to beat, because I always try to get a sense of like how long games may take me.
Yeah.
And according to how long to beat, looks like most people are finishing it in about 10 hours for main game content. So that's also, I think, contextualizes some of like, hey, the combat, it's not as sort of precise. The story, it's a little bit shorter than Hollow Knight, I think. So it's just the scale of it is a different scale of game. But I'm really enjoying it. And I think for me currently, it's like a solid, like 8 out of 10 game where, it's not perfect, but I'm having a really good time, and I'm excited to just get back into the world.
Awesome. It
Yeah.
looks the vibe of it looks really really cool. So maybe when I come over, I can see your
Yeah.
comic.
Yes.
It's very cool.
And then the last thing for me, I saw Furiosa, a Mad Max saga.
How was it?
Honestly, I dug it. I thought it was so,
Ugh.
if you're watching Mad Max, you're not going for high-end artist, artist story, or
How very dare you?
I'm just saying. You're going for the motorcycles go vroom, the explosions go boom. Like, you are going for the sand and like just the dirt. And it had all of that. You're going for the grease paint on the face. Like,
I grew up loving Mad Max, so this is amazing. I was a little bit worried from some of the trailers, so I'm glad that you had a fun time with it.
I had a good time with it. I think, my only other experience was the other Mad Max that came out. Yeah, Fury Road. And so amazing. It was really cool because this is a prequel to Fury Road. So seeing some of the stuff that I remembered from the original movie, and seeing some of the things that got set up, it was fun for me because I have no other background in Mad Max. Yeah. It's also just really cool to see like the hodgepodge of vehicles that they mash up together. I will say, I think some of the characters I wish went further in their depictions of just being, absolutely like batshit off the walls. You know,
bonkers.
I
Yeah.
wanted them to be a bit more out there, but I
Mhm.
think narratively, if we're giving it grace, it's like, oh, well, it's not as far into this apocalypse, so maybe they're not as far gone,
That makes a lot of
sort of.
sense. Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
so that's the grace that I gave them. But in my head, I was like, I want people to be more wild and more unpredictable and a bit more chaotic. But it was still very, very fun. So
I'm gonna have to see it. I
yeah,
also love Fury Road, so when I saw that you saw it, I was like, I gotta hear how it went. I'm
yeah.
so excited.
No, I loved it. Yeah, it was great. Just to finish out the pastry case, notable releases this week. So the week of May 28th through June 3rd. One of our more anticipated titles. Joel, do you want to take this one? Because I know you've been very much looking forward to it.
I was really pumped to get Animal Well as you were talking about it, and then I scrolled down and saw that Nine Souls releases this week, which I last summer was one of the Steam Next Fest games that I
Yep.
played, and I have been like, I literally go to the wishlist page once a month just in case I missed an announcement. And this week it's finally coming. I'm
I
so
know.
stoked for this game.
Yes, Nine Souls is coming out on the 29th. It's by Red Candle Games. Another sort of platformer 2D Souls-like awesome experience with the demo. I also cannot wait. I will definitely be playing it. The next game is Scald Against the Black Priory. That it's a really interesting game. I feel like you would dig it a lot more than me, to be very honest. This is sort
Oh,
of a retro RPG game, like very 80s esque. 80s tangential, and it's got
yeah.
Lovecraftian horror. It's very grim, and it's just sort of this like it's just an RPG. It's by Raw Fury and High North Studios, and yeah, that's coming out on the 30th.
Aesthetically, it reminds me of like the old like Command and Conquer or like Double
Mhm.
Dragon, like that type of art
Yeah.
style. But top down, which is obviously different than those games.
Yes.
Very cool.
Yeah. The next game we've got here is Humanity, which has already been out on PC, but if you are an Xbox fan and you're waiting for games on Xbox, Humanity's coming out on I lost the page, the 30th as well. This is a this is like artsy game for sure. This is a
Hmm.
weird artsy puzzle game. Um, the premise is humanity puts the fate of mankind in your hands, and you are actually a dog in this game. You're a Shiba Inu, so you have
What?
to you're commanding and sort of what is it, herding these massive crowds
Mm.
to get to salvation.
It's kind of like a Lemmings situation, maybe.
Sort of, yeah. Except I think you want to save them. You wanted them to get to salvation versus jumping off the cliff.
Oh, I thought you try. I remember trying to save the Lemmings when I played that game. Did I play it wrong?
I don't know. I actually never played Lemmings. I just know the stereotype of like the lemmings jumping off the cliffs.
I think it looks like very similar. It's like if you don't change their path somehow, they will all jump off and die. And so that's
Okay.
kind of the vibe that I'm getting looking at these images. So
Yeah. So it's one of those games that I have not played yet. It looks really interesting and just weird and artsy and fun. I just haven't gotten to play it yet. So I've got my Xbox. I should probably just boot it up at some point. And then the final game releasing again on the 30th is Aster Blade of the Monolith. This is coming out on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC via Steam. It's by C2 Game Studio and published by Versus Evil and Tiny Build. This is a very just traditional looking, sort of fast paced RPG 3D platformer. I think it looks really fun, really playful. It kind of brings to mind, I think, some of the older, it's not quite as old as like a Nintendo 64 or like,
hmm.
PlayStation collectathon RPG, but it's definitely sort of pays homage to that, in my opinion, when I look at this trailer.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is exciting, and I cannot wait for
Yeah.
Nine Souls.
I will say, yeah, Nine Souls is definitely the standout of this group of games launching next week for sure. As always, if you've got any questions, comments about the pastry case, please feel free to email Jenny at geeksandgrounds.com, and we will respond either here or in email, whichever one is relevant to what you say. So that takes us to this month's brew. Hyper Light Drifter. We're going to be talking about Hyper Light Drifter. We again talked about North, which is the first section of the game, the first, I would say, quarter of the
Yeah.
game, basically,
Hmm.
in our last episode. So please check that out because we're going to jump in. I think we all, technically, I think we went to East next, correct?
Yes, I think we did north, east, west,
And
south.
South.
Uh,
I guess before we jump in, just to refresh everyone's minds, just in case you're just listening, you haven't played Hyper Light Drifter, you're just along for the ride. Joel, did you want to try summarizing just in general? Like, what would be your elevator pitch for Hyper Light Drifter?
in a world. Okay, so the opening of this game, you're kind of given this vision of the world coming to an end. You're seeing giant robot type things that are destroying places. You're seeing this kind of sickness that has infected some people. You're seeing this black amorphous substance that is obviously like has like a malevolent intent. And the goal is that you, a drifter, a nomadic person, with your essentially lightsaber and gun are going to go to the different areas of this map to uh, unlock various energy ports, for lack of a better word, so that you can try and bring back a balance to this world that is still very much, it's, I would say, like, I think tribal is a relevant word here
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like tribalism, like the idea of like you have your group of people and that's who you like sync up with, and then you have people who are kind of on the periphery and outskirts that are dealing with kind of the violence that has come since the world kind of ended.
Yeah.
So you're the drifter. You're the nomadic drifter that's going to try and save us all.
Yeah. And just to break down the title, I mean, because we can start there. You know, you've described really well what the drifter is. That's who we are. I think what's really cool is we actually meet other drifters. Like they seem to have the same form. And so maybe are also I counted them as drifters as
Mm-hmm.
well. But you
Yep.
see other drifters throughout this game too. Hyperlight, I assumed, and I'm curious if you did the same, uh, was that pink energy that you were talking about, this like the pink substance. And so that to me was the hyperlight. I'm not entirely sure because I also was like, is hyperlight like hyperdrive? Like, is that what we use to travel as drifters? But in my head, for whatever reason, I was like, the hyperlight to me is the pink stuff.
I like that a lot. This kind of like energy source that we talked about in the first episode.
Yeah.
I think I assumed it was this sword, this kind of like lightsaber sword that he carries around,
Ooh,
or the character
yeah.
carries around. I have no idea what the truth is.
And I think that's something that we should dive into a little
Yeah.
bit because I think out of all the games that we have played, we have run Geeks and Grounds for the last year and a half now, or almost actually exactly a year and a half.
A.
And I would say this game probably has left me the most confused about the story after playing that I have ever been in any of the games that we've played, and arguably maybe out of any game that I've played. This is maybe up there in I finished it. I liked the experience a lot. I don't know if I could tell you everything that happened and why.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And following the advice of Heart Machine and the
Mm-hmm.
Discord community, I did do a little bit of searching before our episode today to try and find some analyses. I didn't watch the full meal deal one. I found like a 10-minute synopsis because I
Mm-hmm.
still wanted to kind of give my thoughts as opposed to just like parroting things back. But there are some things that I learned through that we'll definitely share and kind of get into because I was like, oh, like it kind of puts
Mm-hmm.
some mechanical pieces together for me that I was totally not
Awesome.
able to follow up on. So um, you gave your overall perception. I will give mine, which is I loved everything about this game except playing it because I was so bad at it, and it was like I can tell this is cool. Like the movement is cool. The shooting is cool. The lightsaber is cool. The bad guys are cool. The color palette is cool. And I am so bad at this game. I mean, like, I don't have it pulled up so I don't know exactly how long I played, but I can tell you it was well over 20 hours to like get through the
Wow.
four quadrants of this
Yeah.
map.
Well, and I think one thing that shouldn't be understated is this is a difficult game. I think even when it launched in, what was it, 2016?
I think it's 16. Yeah,
yeah,
something like that.
2016. Back when it was launched, I think one of the pieces of feedback was this is a hard game. This is challenging, especially if this is not your style of combat. If you enjoy going headfirst into things, that's not going to serve you here. So I think, I don't know. I think don't, if anyone's feeling bad or feeling like, this game didn't resonate on that mechanical level with me, or it took me forever, everyone said they coasted through it, that's not the case.
You got a Joel on your side if you're in that
Yeah.
camp. I will say I want to give like major props to one specific element of this game before we kind of get
Hmm.
into the story and the
Yeah.
lore. As you go through this game, it's a top-down. Would you consider like a 2D type story or like area map, something like that?
Hmm.
Um, you, as with most games, unlock more powerful attacks and types of defensive tools and different types of like weapons. And one of the things that I thought they did brilliantly is somehow, I don't know if you knew that we should go in that order, but the order that I bought my upgrades happened to be exactly the upgrades that I needed to do the section that we went through for that
Mm.
particular chunk. And if we had gone in any different order, because I just bought the upgrades that were most interesting to me, I didn't buy
Yeah.
them based on the area that I was in. I don't know if I was just lucky or somehow they've kind of guided you to kind of make some decisions like that. But I don't know what your experience was, but somehow, like the part of the map in the south where it's like really important that you can reflect back
Hmm.
projectiles, like I happened to get that upgrade right before I went south. So I don't know. What was your experience with like the upgrade versus the map experience?
I wish I could say it was by design that I was like, hey, this is the order we're going to play it in. It was not.
Totally random.
It was totally like random in the sense that I just like picked the regions just because that's just what felt like
Mm.
good directions to go for us. I felt the same, which was really interesting. I think I will admit, I did not go in and get upgrades until like the end of the second area because I forgot that the hub even like I went north, didn't get any upgrades. When I went to the hub and they were like, go to the next area, basically, I just went east and like didn't go to any of the shops. And
Absolute bananas.
so
Jenny, how did you
honestly,
do this?
the second area east, I was like, this is so flippin' hard. How are people dodging? How are people like, where are the weapon upgrades? Like, I remember distinctly thinking when I was in east, I was just like, are we getting no other weapons? Are we not getting any power ups? And then me being the absolute dingus I am, I was like, oh, it's because this is like some sort of like allegory or thematic like mechanical thing because we have this chronic illness that we're working through and it's just about working through some of this challenge. I'm sure that's it. And then after I beat that second boss in the froggy area, I went back to the hub and instantly just like hit myself in the head because I realized I was just being stubborn for no reason without even knowing it. And I instantly just went shopping and bought a bunch of upgrades.
I had the opposite where I would go to the hub all the time on the
Hmm.
off chance that I had enough like yellow bits to buy something, and I never did because I was like, surely I should have an upgrade by now that would make it so that I can successfully get through this part, and I never did.
We need to just combine our powers to become an actual balanced player.
Disagree. I think you were obviously the one who like got good and
The
absolutely crushed
struggle.
this. You were the older sibling for this game that
Oh,
like was helping me get through because I good lord, it was not great for me.
I will say though, I think it's really weird because I don't think combat is usually something that comes relatively natural to me.
Mm.
I'm a stubborn player more than anything. Hollow Knight was the same way. I wasn't very good at Hollow Knight. I was just really stubborn and I just kept trying areas and trying bosses until I beat them. And I think that was my experience. I think specifically for North and East,
Mm.
where I there were some rooms where I did them you know, 4, 5 times, 6 times, you know, where I would just keep doing the room over and over and over again because I could not figure out like the pattern or the best way to actually move around and like get some of these enemies. Um, I will say, uh, so it wasn't necessarily I got good. I think I just got real stubborn with a lot of this game.
I'm gonna just hard disagree with you because I think it wasn't until the third section of the map when I had bought enough upgrades that I could finally get down to beating a room in 4, 5, 6 times. Before that, it was 10, 11, 15 times before I could get through some of these rooms. And it was
Yeah.
just like,
Oh
it's like
no.
that feeling where it's like, the back of your neck gets hot because you're so
Mm.
frustrated. Like that was me. And like I feel like when I watch videos now where it's like a middle schooler that's like raging online and screaming at their TV, I was like, if I were in middle school, that would be me right now on this plane.
Oh my gosh. I'm curious, did you have, before we get into maybe a
Yeah.
little bit more of the story itself and delving into just like what we got out of that part, just to
Mhm.
focus more on mechanics, did you have a favorite area that we explored? Like when it all is said and done, you were like, oh, this part of the game was actually like really cool, even though it cost me lots of time and patience.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I thought that the east section with the frogs and the water was stunning. Like one of
Hmm.
my favorite areas, just like from a like physical beauty perspective.
Hmm.
But the section that I most enjoyed because I felt like okay, I'm finding a bit of a rhythm with this game, and the elements in this area of the map were very cool. Was West.
Hmm.
I got lost hard in West, which was kind of annoying.
Yeah.
But I thought like with the crystals that you could break open, it's like oh, if you happen to be standing in a crystal when it reforms, you can kind of get stuck. Like I
Hmm.
thought some of that stuff was just really really cool.
Yeah.
So and also, I thought the boss in that section was one of the more interesting bosses, and it didn't take me 20 tries to beat them.
Probably helped.
So
Yeah.
that also helped for sure. How about you?
Yeah.
What were some of the what was like parts of the map that you most appreciated?
I think from a more narrative standpoint, I think South had some really cool moments that I thought were really powerful. I thought
Mhm.
South was also really interesting because of the different structure it had, where like that desert area was pretty much like I'm pretty sure there was no combat in that desert area at the
Right.
top, and you only had combat that was when you were in the underground dungeon sort of
Hmm.
caverns and tech area factory. And so I thought that structure was really interesting, and it was nice because mentally I was like, okay, I'm above ground. I'm not going to have to stress because I know this is where I'm just going to get into some interesting lore bits.
Hmm.
um but I agree, West was probably one of my favorite areas from a combat perspective, from a mechanical perspective. It was one of the harder areas to be sure,
Mm.
but I think it was some of the most interesting combat for me, particularly because of the element of getting frozen. I think having some of the trees scattered throughout and some of the foresty areas, so you had to be a little bit more aware of like, hopefully an enemy's not hiding behind something. I thought that was really, really fun. And it was just a really
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful area.
You also had like those little, there were like the samurai style baddies in that area
Yes. Yeah.
that would like charge and then dash with like a single slash. And like,
Hmm.
there's something about that single slash thing that in any game or media, I'm just
Yeah.
always very into. So,
Yeah. Well, there was like a boss, mini boss, I guess, or sub boss that was like the one with the scythe.
yeah.
Oh, I thought that was so fun. I thought that was a really cool battle. So I think mechanically, my favorite area was probably West, with South following very close behind.
Mhm. Yeah, I also liked South being the last area that I played. I think we both
Hmm.
played. Changing it up such that there, like, it was clear on top, and instead of there being one boss, you had like the three kind of lieutenant bosses.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really good like game design choice, like
Hmm.
to make it so that it was like, okay, they've made it through three sections. Assuming you did the other three first, we're
Right.
going to give them a very different type of experience for this. I thought was really really clever.
Yeah.
Um, So, should we talk a bit about the events and experiences in the game?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to talk about some of these events. Would you like to take maybe the lead in guiding this? Because I think
Sure.
you have the background context.
I've
Just for
got 10
everyone
minutes of context, 10 minutes of YouTube context, everybody.
for everyone listening, I did not watch the video. I actually am planning on watching it after we record this. I'm going to watch the video that Hart put in the Discord because I do want to know what someone who's like really dug deep has come to conclude.
Mm,
But kind of like Joel mentioned earlier, just didn't want to sort of take forget my own thoughts and like take in other folks' analyses before getting my own out there,
yeah.
which admittedly sparse. Not much analysis happening here, but I want to retain what I do have.
Yeah, and I think maybe let's like call back a bit of the things that we discussed last time because I think that it
Mm-hmm.
might cement things a bit. So, like one of the things that we were really curious about when we played North is how everything is kind of this very natural area, like natural landscape with ruins on the surface level, and then underneath everything is like heavy technology, neon
Mm-hmm.
colors. There was like the library and things, and it kind of like sparked this question for us about: is there a world on top of a world here? And what is our actual objective? Are we trying to like destroy this world on top to revitalize the world on bottom? Are we trying to destroy the world on bottom so that people can have a better experience in life on top? What was the deal with kind of the refugees on the outskirts or in the hub, I guess, of the map? So we discussed all of these things with not a lot of answers, and I would say like at the end of the game, I still did not have a lot of answers.
Yeah. I feel like okay, here is what I have surmised.
Mhm.
It may be incorrect, but it's what I came to. Um I think the so at the very beginning there was some sort of vision of like this nuclear blast or some catastrophic explosion that
Mhm.
happened.
Right.
I believe that that catastrophic explosion had something to do with the hyperlight and its use. Um, and I cannot remember, did the explosion happen before or after the Titans were kind of like emerged in that cutscene? Um,
Mm,
I feel like the Titans were there and then the explosion happened.
yeah, I think it's all part of the same initial event.
Yeah, and so I think somehow that hyperlight energy, I'm calling it hyperlight, so apologies if you are a super expert on this game and you know it's not hyperlight. The pink energy to me is hyperlight. I think the use of this hyperlight somehow awakened these titans. Um, a catastrophic explosion happened. Perhaps they lost control of this
Mm,
power, they lost control of this energy. And we do find out through exploring through the world. I wrote down we saw that these groups of animals like the raccoons, the frogs, the birds, they all fought against these titans, I think prior to this catastrophic explosion. And so there was some sort of war happening in terms of this the titans and the hyperlight and all the creatures that inhabited this world.
mhm.
um and it may I kind of connected it to sort of like how oil in the real world works, where it's like maybe they're fighting over use of this, maybe they are fighting over like who gets to control this hyperlight. And I don't know if they're fighting the titans for this, if they're fighting each other for this, or a bit of both.
Yeah. I think those are all like really good insights. And I think a lot of that is true based on like how like the 10-minute thing that I watched. Like a lot of that, I think you're
Mhm.
kind of on the right track with a lot of this.
Yeah.
One of the things that is really fascinating is you talked about like kind of the zeitgeist of 2016.
Hmm.
So much of our understanding of this game comes from people in the community doing real research. And the way that they did that, did you remember like little monoliths that had writing on them scattered throughout the world?
Yes. I did not figure any of them out. I know that the community has translated them.
You literally control. So this is what they actually did in 2016 is they like screen capped or whatever these monoliths with like lit up letterings. Like these are like sigils. Like it is not letters in any way that like you and I would like recognize. And the community went through and like letter by letter translated all of the monoliths. And so
Amazing.
all of the knowledge that like we have are the things that we've assumed and surmised. A lot of that comes from the community working together to like solve those puzzles and put the story together. Can we just like, that's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like the amount of dedication you would have to anything to do that. Granted, like I kind of did that with Lost back in the day, but yeah, it's to me, it speaks very highly of the type of game they made and the way they engage their community to make it happen. So okay, so I am going to read one of the translations because it is kind of the linchpin of lore. It's pretty short. Okay. Harnessing a great wellspring, a perfect immortal cell was crafted to be imbued within all sentient life, a noble goal. Though such a power terrified others and brought ruin as its purpose was transmogrified, the abhorrent cell still festers deep in the chambers of this world. So that at the very end of the game, there's like this pink diamond that you're constantly working towards. That was supposed to be a cell that was going to grant immortality to all noble life. And it instead got corrupted. And essentially what you have at the very beginning, so at the start of time, is that cell, that power, getting split between two beings. You have the Anubis, the black dog that's been kind of guiding us throughout, and this is the noble life, the noble goal. And then you have this black antagonist, which you keep getting flashbacks to, like stabbing you. And the community calls them Judgment, I guess. And essentially they've named a lot of the bosses after tarot cards. And I can't remember the reason for that, but there's something in one of these translations that is why they started doing that.
That's incredible. Okay, so I had this sort of like amorphous sort of black entity. So that's Judgment. So we'll just use that moving forward. What I think is okay. So
let's just take that and let's spin for a bit.
Yeah. So we have a perfect. What is it? They called it a perfect cell.
The immortal cell. Perfect cell is from Dragon Ball Z.
There we go. The crossover. So the immortal cell. So it seems like then, and you can stop me if I'm going off track here. It seems like then the pink energy, this hyperlight, was going to be used, and that's what those factories underground were. They were, all of these communities were trying to come together to find a way to create this ability to be immortal. They were going to create a utopian life for themselves. That power was corrupted then by Judgment. Was it corrupted by Judgment?
So I think I'm going to try my best to kind of capture this. So like, I think the corruption happens kind of at the beginning of time, and there's an ancient race that was existing back then.
Okay.
And they built a lot of the foundational technology underground. And also
so they existed pre
the animal factions.
Okay. See, this is where I'm like, the timeline feels so confusing to me. There's something here I'm not getting. That was it. Okay.
And so I think they are also the society. So imagine it's like one of those classic scenarios where it's like you have this ancient, advanced technology society. They're trying to harness the perfect cell. They're the ones who kind of create the Titans, is kind of the gist that the people have kind of landed on. And then for whatever reason, and I think you do learn about this, but like the world kind of explodes a bit. And now we're like millennia in the future, these animal groups that each control a different area of the map are discovering and trying to learn more about this ancient technology so that they can harness it.
Mm,
But they awaken the Titans, which are these giant robots. And that's why you
right.
see them kind of sunders, ruins upon the mountainside of these giant robots. Like these
Right.
animal factions were able to fight them off.
They were able to fight them off, but essentially at great cost because now they are now divided, they are separated, and they're needing to figure out how to rebuild their society. Now here's the interesting thing, because the drifters are not of this world, is my assumption. They are not of this group or society, but they've been brought into this world. um I'm curious if any of your research has shown, because it seemed like at the very beginning Anubis, the jackal, the dog,
Mm-hmm.
was the one that was talking to our character Drifter.
Yes.
So was Drifter like pulled into this world and given this mission by Anubis just because they're like, you're you're the only one able to, Luke Skywalker save us? So is that
I
kind of a
think
thing?
that's it. So this is the other like confirmed thing, because this was on the Kickstarter page way back in the
Mm-hmm.
day. Drifters of this world are the collectors of forgotten knowledge, lost technologies, and broken histories.
Yeah.
That's confirmed. The the theory that I was reading is that Anubis, the like
Mm-hmm.
good version of this, resurrects you, which is why you keep dying and kind of coming back to life. And everything that we see at the beginning of the game is a vision of what happened in the past to try and get
Mm.
you up to speed about what your mission is.
Okay.
But midway through that vision, the judgment comes and infects you with that like pink disease.
Right.
And so like you come back to life, and then immediately like the antagonist gives you this disease is kind of the
Right.
idea. And what you learn is the other drifter that you encounter throughout is referred to as the pink drifter, potentially the king of drifters is kind of the one of the
Oh, dang.
theories.
Okay.
And the idea is they also have this disease. So like Anubis has tried
Yes.
this many times, and the drifters can't successfully get to the end of the line.
Got it. That is what a little bit of what I got close to surmising. I didn't know
Mm.
exactly why, and I think some of this, like the lore that you've contextualized, helps clarify the why a little bit more. But it also, I did notice that there was the pink drifter who also seemed to have the same mission, who also, as we learn when we get to the south, or we learned beforehand, but this drifter is ill, and they keep giving you like, oh, here are all the node
Here's the
locations.
map.
Here's
Yeah.
the map. This is we've we see like the little blurbs, the image blurbs, that they have protected other creatures, like they're
Mm-hmm.
working to try to save this society or help this society somehow. And so it's like, why are you also doing the same mission I'm doing? And so this idea that Anubis is going to these different drifters or bringing in drifters to try and get defeat judgment and sort of break this corrupted cell essentially,
Mm-hmm.
that makes more sense.
I think the catch 22 of it is Anubis and Judgment are pulling from the same energy source, and so if you are successful,
Mm-hmm.
both of them will lose their power and influence on the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with that, which then clarifies the ending a little bit for me, if
Mm-hmm.
Anubis loses their power, they're the one sustaining the
Exactly.
life of the drifter so that they can complete the mission. So, oh, dang. Because at the very end, you see this sort of vision where the drifter kind of goes back and forth between sort of being in this like pink version of like the cell, the factory, and sort of like this end time sort of feeling, but also you see sort of the shore that they started the game in. And so for me, I was like, we're not surviving this.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I knew that the end of this story, or the end of the road essentially was met by the end of the game for the drifter.
I think that's right. And the thing that struck me about that is, we were debating like, are we trying to like get more people down? Are we trying to get more people up? Like,
Right.
what's the vibe? Um, what we're seeing at the end is like a vision of what the future now holds.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still underground, like you're not, you aren't making it out of there.
Right.
And I thought that was like really interesting. But to me, like, I think adds to the confusion and why the lore is so opaque. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the opening of the game. I can't tell if the things I'm seeing were things that like my character was alive for, and you're
Right.
like having flashbacks throughout with like memories, or like what is actually happening. And then you get to the end of the game and you see this like blue water, blue sky thing, and I'm like, well, wait a second, like well, how did I get here? What's
Yeah.
going
Did
on?
we? What? Yeah.
I
Exactly.
guess I did it.
Yeah.
I think the thing that is perhaps the most interesting to me from all of the like 10-minute lore dump that I watched is understanding that each of these animal sects that took a quadrant of the map
Mm-hmm.
leaned heavily into trying to again reawaken this ancient technology, but in different ways. And so you have like the
Mm-hmm.
Hierophant, the very first week, which is like more of a religious sect. You
Yep.
have the Frog group on the east side, who like I didn't understand what I was watching, but it's like on the east side, like there was a genocide. Like
Mm-hmm.
there were these otter people that were completely wiped out
Yeah.
by the frogs. And so it's like you're learning about how like just the access to power really corrupted the goals and intentions of these different groups. And I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was like really interesting, and I think there could have been a lot more to say about that. But I think I don't know, there's a different story in mind by the creators, I guess.
Yeah. I agree. I think this this idea of this resource that all of them want access to, that all of them had access to different degrees at different points in time, I think was an element of the world that I wish we dug into a little bit more.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, I think this wasn't the story to tell that part of this world. This was the drifters journey, and more about this effort to, despite this illness that's consuming the drifter, getting through and attempting to destroy judgment.
Yeah.
um, I'm really curious because we know that there's already another game based in this world called Solar Ash, and there is a sequel called Hyper Light Breaker coming up relatively soon. That's a multiplayer game, so we'll have to
Whew.
all maybe we'll have a game day during one of these hangouts and maybe play a little bit together and jump in.
Maybe I'll stand in the back corner while you and
Yeah.
Hart fight all the baddies.
But I'm
I'll be your
curious,
note taker.
what do you have any hopes, if you were to have a hope for the next game? I guess what kind of story would you like to see in this world? If not the next game, maybe future titles in this world.
Yeah.
What would you like to see from this Hyperlight world?
I think the title break, like Hyperlight Breaker, is interesting because maybe that implies that like you have just broken this source of power. Like, how does the world react to that now that that power
Mm-hmm.
source is no longer there? I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe, but like I would be interested in that. Like to me, that was the thing that you and I were really like speculating on in the first week, was like, what is your goal here? Like, am I trying to change the world, and if so,
Yeah.
how? And to me, that's an unanswered question that is kind of like, it's unsatisfying that there are no answers for. So
Yeah. So that delves into the question that we asked, what sort of the core question that I was hoping folks could reflect on, because this game and many of the games we have played honestly have this level of vagueness, of obfuscation. What's that word where it's like obfuscated?
obfuscation.
Yeah, obfuscation, where it's like things are kind of intentionally not
Mm.
said. Things
Yeah.
are intentionally hidden. Um, I'm curious because we've had different experiences where sometimes when things are vague, we are excited. We want to dig in deeper. We're like, ooh, this is tantalizing. The lore, the mysteries. Let's solve these puzzles to figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
There are other cases when we experience media or experience a game, that we play and we're like, they're not telling us anything. This feels like poor world building and poor narrative. I'm curious for you if there's a difference that you can identify between when you are engaged by something that's vague
Mm.
or made maybe disinterested by the fact that something is vague.
I think the dissatisfaction that I have right now with the way that like we didn't get any understanding of like how the world moves forward from here. I think the reason that I'm dissatisfied is because the game was so vague that it was completely left up to the player to figure out what you care about. Like you
Mm.
choose which elements of what you're experiencing you are the most interested in, what you care about. And I think having that much freedom almost guarantees that unless you happen to choose exactly the thing that the game's ending already had in mind, I think it kind of guarantees there will be some dissatisfaction, maybe. Like, I don't know. I'm
Mm.
just now thinking about this, like, as you were talking about it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I I honestly have been mulling over this because I still haven't settled into what allows me to feel satisfied versus dissatisfied when
Mm,
something is vague. I think the dissatisfaction for me comes from a lack of a coherent thread, which is why I think I did not feel dissatisfied with Hyperlight Drifter, because when I started digging, I felt like there were coherent threads and that there were actually answers. I just hadn't
mm,
found them yet necessarily.
sure.
Um, do I think do I think they could have maybe illustrated some of this a bit better for people like me to understand a little bit more quickly? Yes, definitely. But I think ultimately the developers had a really strong goal and intent, and I think they knew what they wanted to say, which felt like it came across well in the game. I think and I think Gree. That
We
was a
never
similar.
decided.
We never did decide. I think that for me held the same element where I think uh, I've talked to folks who are like, but I feel like it was so vague. They didn't really
Mm,
illustrate exactly
mhm,
what sort of story was happening in this game. And I'm like, well, I think the intent of the developers was clear enough where even though you can take kind of whatever you want from it, um, I feel like I understand that their goal was clear enough, which is that's such a vague response. It's such an unsatisfying response from my part. But I think there's this level of I'm trying to figure out how I'm determining it, but for some reason there are these feelings I get where I'm like, I feel like the developer actually knew what they wanted to say here, and they actually had something that they were feeling, even if I don't
mm,
get it. Versus I don't know if the developer knew what they wanted to say. And I don't know if they had the coherent
mm.
threads placed, or if it was like sort of what's the word, retconned, kind of
Retconned it.
backward in. Um, but yeah, I'm
That's
still
tough.
mulling over the question because and I asked it, which is frustrating. But um,
Mm.
yeah, because I
Do
typically
you?
do like a vague game. I
Yeah.
enjoy ambiguity. So.
Yeah. Well, I guess as you were playing, I've kind of talked about like the thing that I was most interested in,
Mhm.
kind of throughout the whole game. What were some of the things or thing that you think you were the most interested in, kind of like as you were going through? I remember you talking a
Hmm.
lot about like the illness, like chronic illness kind of aspect of the game. Were there things that
Yeah.
like you were particularly gravitating towards?
You know, by the end of it, I think I really gravitated towards the individual, sort of the stories of the individual tribes or groups of animals
Mm,
and how they were dealing with this turmoil in their world. Again, it was. I think the illness almost became like there's the literal illness that the drifters were experiencing, like even the pink drifter by the time you
yeah.
got to the south. You learn that the drifter has also been going through this illness, and sort of what were they doing to prepare to sort of pass on the torch in light of knowing that they're not long for this world. I thought
Yeah.
that was a really interesting thread. But also this illness of that corruption of power, I think, which is what you mentioned earlier. um the illness of like the hierophant and the crows and this fanaticism that happened to them as they were again, recreating this sort of world in their own vision. The
Hmm.
frogs and the fact that they resorted to this total violence. Um, in the West with, I think it was the lizards, no, the raccoons. I think, is that the West? Was that the raccoons?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, I think the idea of stasis and sort of this inaction was something that I started toying with when I was playing, because
yeah.
of the
Hmm.
ways that the crystal held them trapped in time.
Yeah.
This inability to move forward, whether or not, physically trapped or maybe even mentally, emotionally trapped within that time. So I think these individual scenarios were something I wasn't necessarily
Hmm.
expecting from the game, but I felt like all left really good food for thought. I feel like I just need to like chew on it a little bit longer. This is a game I
Yeah.
feel like I need to play maybe one or two more times to feel like I can fully come to conclusions of my own and like come
Hmm.
to what I really want to take away from it.
Yeah. Well, I wonder too. Oh, you actually reminded me. One of the things that I thought was really fascinating in the quick vid that I watched
Hmm.
had to do with the birds in the north, because essentially, like, the subtext of what has happened here is there was an old religion with these birds, and then the Hierophant came and split the sect and got rid of one of them.
Right. Well, because you meet a
You meet the other
bird. Yeah,
shaman,
you meet
yeah,
another shaman bird that's like,
caring for
this
the
is,
tiny birds that are
yeah,
not baddies.
yes, yeah, which is so fascinating. Again, it's like you had this religion and this sect of religion that wasn't hyper violent and fanatical, and yet this is what they gravitated towards when having the two options. So really, really interesting stuff. It was just one of those games where I'm like, I wish I was smart enough to get this.
I don't, I think it's not even just about intelligence so much as like effort. I think this is
Hmm.
a game that, like, if you're really gonna, first of all, if you're really going to play it, it requires effort. If you're really going
Hmm.
to understand it, it requires effort. And
Hmm.
maybe there's something about that like is worth appreciating in and of itself. That,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good thought, I think, to wind down our discussion on. I guess, is there any last things you wanted to say to sum up your experience with the game, or did that do it for you?
don't hate me, guys. I did my best. I tried so hard.
Don't hate me. Again, this is why, like, we all come to this club and to every game with different sets of experiences, and at different times we will come at it with different levels of engagement and proficiency, and that is a-okay.
It is okay. How about you? Any
Yeah.
final thoughts for you?
um I think I was really, really looking forward to playing this game because it is one of those indie classics. I
Mm,
think when people talk about, oh, what's an indie game that everyone should play, I think a lot of the time Hyperlight Drifter is on that list, when I've asked folks. So I'm
yeah.
really happy to have played it. I really did enjoy my experience. I think, again, this is one of those where I probably will revisit it perhaps in a few months, just on the side, just to continue to be in the world and, like you said, put in that effort, savor it a little bit more, so that I really want to just be able to experience and come to some of the conclusions myself as I play. And so, very rewarding experience. I'm excited that it's going to continue to be rewarding in the future, because I know I'm not going to end it here,
Hmm.
especially with the sequel coming out.
Okay, fair. Totally
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
thank you. Any final housekeeping items for us?
yes, we have our game announcement for June to do, because we have not announced it. Well, we announced it in Discord, but just in case you aren't in the Discord, let's see. I'm trying to find the chat and I cannot find, just to like give you the Steam page link so you can also add your thoughts to it. Oh my gosh. We're going to play, I'm just going to say it. For the month of June, we are going to be diving into the recent released 1000 Times Resist. This is a game, golly, it just launched on May 9th, the day that every other game launched last month, honestly. And I played a portion of this game during Ludonarracon, and as soon as I finished the sort of early preview experience that I got, I knew that we had to play this game. I think it's
Awesome.
incredibly it's going to be a weird experience in the sense that a lot of it's very surreal. It is a sci-fi adventure. There is a blend of different mechanics that they're going to put in, and the Steam page description, just to give you all a little taste, is A Thousand Times Resist is a thrilling sci-fi adventure. The year is unknown, and a disease spread by an alien invasion keeps you underground. You are Watcher. You dutifully fulfill your purpose in serving All Mother until the day you discover a shocking secret that changes everything. This is a game that's really informed by the pandemic. This is a game that explores identity. So many of the games we played do, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion surrounding it. It dives into diaspora. The team, I believe, are based in Canada, and they specifically want to create media that explores Asian diaspora and also how the intersection of art forms, not simply games, but movies, theater, dance, other multimedia experiences. They want to figure out how to embed all of that into their games. And so I'm really excited to play it with y'all.
Me too. I picked it up this afternoon. I watched the
Yep.
trailer. It looks really, really cool. So I'm pumped to dig in and share that with you all. Our first next week.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be kicking it off next week. We'll be playing, I'll send out the newsletter, but in case, again, depending on how you experience this club, you may not sign up for the newsletter. If you don't, you want to, go to geeksandgrounds.com. You can sign up there, but we'll be playing through chapter 2, I believe. Let me actually double check that because I wouldn't want to lie to anyone right now or spread misinformation. Yes, we are going to play from the beginning through chapter 2. If you're playing on Steam, you'll get the achievement complete chapter 2, so you'll know when you've completed it.
How are you playing it?
I'm playing it on Steam.
Okay.
I believe it is only on Steam currently, actually.
Gotcha.
I don't think they're on any other platform, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us at Geeks and Grounds. It was so fun getting to chat through this with you all, and thank you for being flexible. We had a really challenging time with travel over the month of May. So back to regular scheduled programming. May you find your perfect cell, and may Anubis guide you to the Black Gates.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.